This episode is brought to you by t𝗵𝗶𝘀. t𝗵𝗶𝘀 helps you uncover your purpose and who you truly are through the lens of human design. By understanding your unique energetic blueprint, you can navigate opportunities with more inner confidence, make aligned decisions, and live with greater authenticity. Instead of struggling with resistance, burnout, or uncertainty, human design supports you in stepping into your natural inner flow to then follow your purpose. To learn more about how human design can guide you towards clarity and alignment, visit t𝗵𝗶𝘀.de. And for more information, follow the link in our show notes. Welcome to Young Blossom 25 Future Leaders Revealed. I am Inga, and with me is my co-host Vaios, and today with us is Adriana Schermer Martinez, who is joining us for a conversation about future of leadership to share her perspective on multi-generational workplaces. Adriana, very warm welcome. We're very happy to have you on the show. And usually we ask ChatGPT for an introduction. I did it, and you will like it or maybe not. And the answer of ChatGPT was, there is not enough reliable information available about Adriana. Adriana, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself professionally, personally, whatever you feel comfortable with? And then we kick it off.
Of course, yeah. Apparently, ChatGPT left me like the introduction, so it's fine. My name is Adriana. I am actually Spanish. Lived in Spain for like 11 years. I grew up in Spain, in Barcelona. And after I turned 11, I moved to Germany with my family. And that's where I like finished my school. I started studying and I've completed my bachelor's degrees in psychology. And now I'm currently in my master degree, psychology. I'm living in Erfurt. It's like a little, it's not little because it's actually the capital of like Thuringia. And it's in Eastern Germany, near to the border of like the Czech Republic. Yeah, you could describe it like that.
Very
Exactly.
nice.
I'm 23 years old and I'm happy to be part of the podcast today.
Very, very, very nice. And I remember when we first met, you were telling me that you moved at the age of 11 to Germany, which was similar to my story. I moved from Russia when I was 11 as well. But when did you move from Germany to Greece?
I was apparently 14 years old.
Oh, so we kind of moved around the similar time. Well, lovely to have you. And just before we jump in, a reminder to our listeners that in this podcast, we are here to have conversation with future leaders to gain first-hand understanding from them about their approach to work, life, learning, progress, and equally, we will also welcome on the show current leaders to share with them insights and provoke how working environment and learning institution potentially need to adapt to set up younger generation for success.
Great.
Vaios.
So, Adriana, welcome. We're so excited to have you on Young Blossom 25. We always start with the same question to all our guests. And the first thing that is important just to deep dive is a little bit your perspective on generational gaps within the workplace and how you see the role of current leaders versus Gen Z. What's your take on that?
Well, so at first, I would like to talk about the topic of the gap. And I would like to say that I'm noticing the gap myself because I'm not only like a student, but I'm also like working at a big company now, kind of. And when I first entered, I was like, where's my Gen Z people? There's absolutely no Gen Z person. So I think that I was like the only reference that my coworkers had of Gen Z. So that's why I was the only person that was in communication with my coworkers regarding this gap. And what I mean by that is that many things that I would like say to my Gen Z friends, I couldn't because I didn't have Gen Z coworkers, obviously. And so that the communication, like I notice it because when I try to like communicate with my older coworkers not belonging to the Gen Z with like memes, for example, which is really typical for communication, that was like a bit of a clash, you know? And I'm noticing it a lot. And it's not only this, it's just one aspect of like the big gap that we're currently facing, especially at my work, because we don't have so many representative Gen Z people. And I think that this might be like a big thing in the future, the gap getting bigger, humans getting more individual. yeah, I think it's important to talk about it. And that's why I'm honored to be able to be a guest. And I would love to discuss about my perspective on Gen Z and the the chances that we also have besides the problems.
Is there anything specific, anything in particular that makes Gen Zers better compared to the other generations? Do you see anything that makes them more interesting or less interesting, maybe?
I wouldn't describe better as like a subjective fact because I don't like to do these kind of things. There's no such thing as better or worse. But I would like to say that in terms of like the future and the digitalization, AI, I think that Gen Z brings like a toolbox, a big toolbox of competences that could be shared with older generations that they don't have maybe because they didn't grow up with the things that are important more and more for the future. So I would say that we have other competences. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're better because I also think that the hard skills, what I mean by hard skills is life experience. You know, we don't have the life experience, but we have like the competences that we could maybe exchange or like share with people that have life experience, and we could get to like a compromise, you know?
And would you like to give a little bit more context around those competences? What is it that Gen Z brings different compared to other generations?
So I think that one big competence is like the connection that we have. We're like worldwide connected, and not only connected, but we're also like so spontaneous when it comes to like different countries, different languages, different things, you know. Everything is so much more reachable and so much faster. So me, for example, when my father lives in Argentina, and if like I need something for my father, I need I don't know, let's say a document, you know, I take my phone, I call my father, he directly picks up, he sends me the document over, you know, like the processes are much more, like much faster than they used to be. I don't need to like write a letter to my father and I get a letter back in like a month or so. And so that's one aspect, like we're much faster. And I also think that our brain structures allow us to like be much more flexible, and like cognitive things are like much faster because also when we think about our attention span, it's much less like than the attention span of like, I don't know, another generation. But I wouldn't say that this necessarily is like a loss, rather a chance, because we are like, we can adapt much faster to things or like to changes. That makes sense.
I don't think I have ever heard after so many episodes about the attention span. Makes me think different directions. Thank you, Adriana. Inga?
Yeah, I was wondering, the attention span and is that linked to the ability to digest a lot more content? Because I sometimes feel overwhelmed. Like we launched this podcast and I know that, you know, to build relevance for the podcast, I need to be on all those social media platforms. Like I open TikTok and I'm like, I'm overwhelmed, like literally, because people are screaming at me. I don't know how to switch off the sound of those reels. And I really struggle to find the right tonality, to find the right wording. And I also don't want to use content that I created for LinkedIn, which to me is very intuitive. Like I think I understand that platform the best, but this is not the same as for Instagram or TikTok. Is it that you guys are better navigate? And I say you guys, you being representative here for for the younger generation and us being representative of the older generation, that you guys are able to grasp all of that a lot better, navigate that a lot better, understanding the nuances of it a lot better as well?
I would say like in terms of digitalization or like especially social media, because that's what you named, I think that we are able to digest a lot of information much faster. Yeah, I would say that. I would also say that navigating through like the social media apps are easier for us because we grew up with this, you know? I grew up with my phone in my hand 24/7, and it's not a blame, and it's also not a blame on my parents that made me grow up like this, because then if it is a blame, you have to blame society because that's what it made it like, you know? But yeah, I would say that in terms of like navigating and digesting, we're able to digest these kind of informations and processes like faster. And also we are able to like use the different platforms, for example, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, like much better or more efficient or like more fitting to the platform because they're like really different within each other, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And if I can switch gears, so you said you are now you're doing your psychology masters. You've been working next to your studies. As you are approaching entering workplace, how do you think about, what would you like to find in the workplace for yourself that motivates you? Which I guess another question there is, what motivates that generation? Like, what are your thoughts? How are you approaching it?
In workplace, and it's a really good reference because I've just started, like 5 months ago I've started working in a company. Before I didn't really like have serious jobs, I would say. And now it's like more focusing on like my future and what I really want to do. And I went in the company and I said, really transparent, this is how I am. This is kind of what I want, because I couldn't like make it concrete because I didn't know. And I was like, and the only thing I expect from you guys, my chiefs, is for you to be honest to me, for you to be transparent to me, for you to communicate with me, to give me feedback, to tell me what can I do. Because my wish for my workplace is like to be able to fulfill myself, to like be able to pursue my passion, pursue my purpose, but also regarding the working times, I'm literally going to spend half of my life at work, if not even longer, because of like the situation. I would also like to have a good working atmosphere. And what I mean by that is maybe not to be families with my coworkers, but like to be able to have a great time together.
And in your so far 6 months experience, how did the company respond? How satisfied have you been with your experience so far?
Well, so at first, when I had my first interview, my chief, like a few days later, was like, you know what? I wouldn't have expected for you to be so like rude. And he didn't mean rude in like a bad term, but when I asked him further, because I was like, rude, I'm sorry. Can you explain? Give me an analogy maybe. And he was like, yeah, well, I mean, rude. I mean, you were really direct and you told really what you want to say. You were not scared. You were not ashamed or afraid. And that made me think, wow, was I rude? I didn't have the impression. I even thought that being honest might take the rudeness away because it gives off every information that you need. So, but yeah, that was the first feedback that I've got, being rude. And I've also got feedback from my coworkers that was more formulated as a joke, but I have the impression that people have a view on Gen Z and on me, but I'm Gen Z representing, that we don't want to work that much, that we want home office, and after 2 p.m. we leave the office. These kind of jokes I was confronted with, yeah. And although they're jokes, I really think that people have implemented in their heads that Gen Z generation doesn't have the working culture that others have.
I have two questions, I have to say. So, Adriana, I need to ask, okay? I can't help myself. What was the word in German?
The word in German for rude?
Yes. What was yes.
It was frech.
Okay.
Flippant.
Yes.
So it was not like, it's like a bit flippant. Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know the word flippant. But...
Yeah, that's basically frech.
Yeah.
If somebody is frech, it's more like, it's kind of rudish, Swedish. So you would say that person would say she was flippant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And building a little bit on your thought around the frech term, etc. Why do you think Gen Zers are misunderstood? You provide a great example. You want to work less, although a joke, there may be, small signals, something that you can take out of this. But still, we see this in almost every discussion that we have with people on our show. Gen Zers are misunderstood. What is it that you believe this relies upon?
I think it's a different way of living. For example, when you walk through the streets, and let's not maybe say today, but like 5 years ago, before COVID, for example, you enter like the tram and you see younger people all on their phone, like all stuck on their phone. And what people like, I think what people have a connotation with is that being on their phones means directly being unproductive, not being aware of surroundings. And I think that's really wrong because, but that's another topic. And also like being rude in terms of the surroundings. For example, you have the probability of having like a car crash. I'm sorry, guys. And the probability of like having like a car crash for a person that is driving is much higher if a person is like looking on their phone. That's what people like think. I think it's like a different lifestyle that we're living that people don't know, and what is different is directly wrong if you don't know it. And it's like a human thing, you know, to like directly think that things that you don't know are directly wrong.
I think from all the conversations by now that we had, the phone thing is connected to either attention span or they need a lot of input to, you know, constantly being, what's the word? Being fed with content. That's one thing. The other thing is that, okay, they need constant entertainment or something, which, you know, every time I visit my parents and we are sitting at the breakfast table, everybody has a device, if not 2 devices with them. And I'm like, well, my parents are certainly not Gen Z. So here we are. And I have this funny moment when I always go for Christmas to Germany and then it tends to be cold. So every morning I ask my father, who is a smoker and who is not allowed to smoke in the house, he goes outside for smoking. I said, hey, Dad, how's the weather? And instead of telling me, hey, it's cold, he opens his phone to tell me the temperature. And I'm like, well, not Gen Z. Okay, but that's a different topic. I think the biggest topic that I kind of start to nail it down to is that, and you said it as well, the self-fulfillment, like whatever I do, it needs to fulfill me. Like it needs to be meaningful. It needs to be enjoyable. Like it needs to add something to myself rather than just going to work and spending arguably a lot of time there. And that seems to clash with, well, I guess less so with Gen Y, like the millennials, because they kind of started that movement. They were also very, very vocal about work-life balance, that the interpretation or the evolution of work-life balance is I need work that gives me fulfillment. And we had here also people on the podcast who were saying, well, work-life balance doesn't really exist because, I mean, we understand that, you know, there is work and there is a need, but whatever we do, we at least need to enjoy it. And I think in our generation, it was a lot more present that, well, you enjoy it, you don't enjoy it. I mean, you have to pay the bills. You just go suck it up and be done. Like, stop complaining. You learn something, you do that for the rest of your life. The stability, need, whatever you had would make you work in the same company for the next 25 years. So that individualistic approach and the fact that you guys are expressing it also quite
Correct.
vocally, right? Then somebody could say, das ist aber ganz schön frech. Das ist flippant how you come across, but at the same time you're quite transparent about it, like you're not pretending as if. So what drives the self-fulfillment? Because that is, I think, very much linked also to purpose, and a lot of time we talk about that mystical purpose. What drives that? What defines that? Can you already, you're still quite young, articulate for yourself what is it that you're looking for in terms of purpose in a company?
I have 2 different thoughts on that. The first thought is, especially Gen Z is used to be a consumption generation. Yeah. We just consume. But if you look into like humans' nature, I think we humans are designed to like create. And if I think about like purpose and self-fulfillment, then creation is a big term of it. Because like me as an individual person, as a human, I want to be able to create something. I consume a lot. I consume enough. And that's all right. I don't need a person in front of me telling what I have to do, because that's what I like do in my free time all the time on my phone, you know, when consuming. It's exaggerated, but yeah. And that's one big thing, like that we're fed up with consumption. And the other thing is, do you know the hierarchy of needs of Maslow, Abraham Maslow? I will shortly explain it for the audience. And it's like, because you've also talked about your generation and your working moral, and you had to work, you had to pay your bills. And if you look into the hierarchy of needs of Maslow, it says that every person has needs, and they have like different categories. The first category is like physiological needs, like a safe place, and I'm generalizing the pyramid. But if this need is fulfilled, then you can strive the other need. The other need might be like friendship, love. And the next category is like status. The next and last category is like self-actualization, which is, the striving of purpose, of fulfillment. And I think that's where our generation has arrived, because we, at least in Europe, I can only speak from Europe and from like the privileged part of the world. And I think that we didn't grow up with our parents being in World War II or hunger. And that's why I think that all of these needs are already given since we're small, since we're young. I didn't suffer from hunger, and my whole surroundings, at least my bubble, neither of them suffered by hunger. But my grandmother did. My grandmother suffered by hunger. And that's what generalization-wise she gave to my mother. And so that's why my mother is also an older generation. She was looking in work. She didn't look for self-fulfillment, but she rather looked for like paying bills. That's the second aspect that I would like think that this purpose terms is coming.
I think that was very nicely contextualized. That the basic needs of the Maslow Pyramid, because there are basic needs that need to be fulfilled before you start thinking about, the purpose and what's my contribution to the planet, and all those things that were potentially 20 years ago, 30 years ago, nice to have because you were going through whatever financial crises. Like I still remember them when I finished university. It was in the middle of the financial crisis, and I sent like 100 applications and I got 2 offers. It was not a great hit rate, but somewhere in between there were 98, no thank you, but no thank you. The why is clear, why purpose is a lot more dominant and a lot more present, not dominant, a lot more present in the younger generation. Is it easy to find yourself and define what matters to you? What are you driven by? What are your motivational triggers? How easy or difficult is it for you to determine that?
That's a great question. And I think it can be as easy as it can be difficult. Nowadays, we have like so many opportunities of what even to do. There are so many jobs. There's one job with so many descriptions and so many options. And I think that this thing could make it either easier or harder. But I would like to focus on the aspect that for us, and what we really like is being mirrored to us the whole time, and in the algorithm. If we like something, if I'm into cars, for example, let's say I'm a person, my hobbies are cars, then I get confronted with cars so much more than a person that doesn't like cars. And so I'm biased. And I think it could be really great for finding your purpose. Also, on the other side, I think that motivation plays a big role in it. And I don't know if our generation is motivated enough to like find their purpose. But when they are, then they're able to do it a lot. Yeah.
Interesting. And in terms of the motivation, and maybe not so much from yourself, but from your friends and maybe group of friends, question on loyalty, because one thing leads a little bit to the next, right? So people join a workplace, they like it, they don't like it, whatever they don't like, they're relatively quickly to move on. So what we describe as loyalty, we tend to say that Gen Z it's very hard to build loyalty with them. Is it though?
It depends on how you define loyalty, because if you say that being loyal to a company means staying, then I would say that we're not loyal. But if you define loyalty as being in a meaningful way inside of this company, or being really honest with yourself and the company, if you can combine it, and make a thing out of it, then we are loyal. Yes, because I think that Gen Z, they look much more in how can I do something for good for the future, like how can I contribute? And if they don't find it in a company, they're quickly saying, okay, it's not for me because I have other options anyways. And yeah, I think that Gen Z, like, they don't really think that much of the consequences, because the consequences are different. They are not as many consequences, because my CV is sended and I get it. I get the job like the next day. It's exaggerated, but there's jobs everywhere if you want to, if you look at it.
I guess the frustration that my generation may have with that, Vaios, who is a recruiter, so his job is nothing else than hiring great people for PepsiCo. He brings the people in. Obviously, any company invests into, educating, training, making the person great at what the person was hired to, and the person has potential to develop that person. Now, development doesn't happen because I really want it right here, right now. Timing also plays a role. And the frustration there is, so loyalty indeed is, how can I make people stay longer? And of course, if somebody is really smart, extremely talented, will not stay in the same job for the next 5 years. But how do you design something that works for both parties? Because this is a big friction at the moment in workplaces, that younger generation, the churn in the companies, the rotation in the companies is predominantly in the younger ages because of what you just described, right? And whether there is transparency or not, I think there is not enough, not because you don't say it, but also because we don't ask potentially the right questions. An example of that is when we had that situation in PepsiCo that 2-3 young people quit in a very short period of time. So usually I don't get involved in those things as a GM of the company, but I was like, why is this happening? Like, what's happening? Is there another underlying issue potentially? And the response I got was, oh, they all got a job, a better paid jobs. It sounded like it's all about the money. And this is where Vaios and I, we always had a really good alignment. People don't respond to job offers because of money. Because when you are being approached by a recruiter, the recruiter is not telling you, I have a fantastic job, it's going to make you hundreds of thousands of euros. No, the recruiter is approaching you saying, hey, this company, Vaios, you correct me if I'm wrong, this company, and there is a great opportunity, and here is the possibility that is going to be put in front of you, and don't you want to listen more and meet some people? And then you say yes. So the moment you say yes, this is already, in my world, this is already something is not right in the first place. Because if everything was good in your company where you're in right now, you wouldn't say yes. Or would you?
I would like to address the question that you had, if you're asking the wrong questions. I wouldn't say that the questions are wrong, but maybe the questions are a bit too late. And what I mean by that is, as we already addressed the subject of like the attention span, that also kind of like attention span means also like interest span, right? And so when I think of my surroundings, of my Gen Z people, then I think that if they're unhappy with the current situation at work, they don't wait for long until they search for the next opportunity, So what I would like from my chiefs and from chiefs in general is to like not ask the right questions, but to like react quickly. And for that is needed to like have a constant feedback, a constant one-to-one meetings, conversations. Where are you at right now? Are you happy at what you're doing right now? What can we do? So that's it. And because I don't think that Gen Z, they wait too long until they do the next.
And so the one thing is that the questions asked potentially too late. How vocal and transparent are you? Because one thing is I may not ask the question, but are you also giving clarity? Hey, I'm not happy. Hey, this is not enough. Hey, I need more. Is your generation transparent and clear on that?
I think my generation is really transparent to feedback in general. I think they are, especially on the internet, on social media. When I read comments, I think that they're more than transparent sometimes. But I think also that for us being able to be transparent, someone has to allow us to be how we are. And I think that regarding working context, we don't have we only have the tool of being transparent if it's getting if it's getting taken seriously, it's not up to us anymore. So I think that we need kind of also a leader to allow us to be transparent and to allow us to express ourselves if it's good for the company or not, because it's always going to be good, to be honest, in my opinion. And you ask me if I'm transparent, I would say 100% yes. Also, of course, it depends on the personality, but in terms of generations, I think that we're much less afraid of what could happen. So yes, we are much more transparent. And we also expect transparency.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. But without accounting the drop of time, we are already more than 30 minutes into the conversation. I think there are some really good new perspectives, especially on the purpose and why this is so dominant. I think that's a big takeaway for me from today's conversation. I think the other thing is asking questions at the right time and the right questions potentially, but also taking it seriously, because sometimes we hear something, we don't like what we hear, and we kind of move on. And then when we face the consequences, we're like, oh yeah, but how did it happen? Why did it happen? We're so surprised at the same time. And yeah, you're right. Your generation is a lot more vocal in general. It may not always sit well with all the people how the message is being delivered, but you cannot ignore that the message was delivered. Whether you like the tone or you like the content or both is a bit of a different story. And then the third piece that I noted down was the toolbox of competencies. And I think that I quite like how you framed it, because you do bring different competencies along the way. And it's also up to us, representing the older generation, to also acknowledge that those are relevant competencies and going to be even more relevant in the future. And I think there we're also quite dismissive sometimes. And we're like, yeah, okay, they can only scroll on the phone. Well, but maybe I should talk to some Gen Z to help me out with my social media. It's probably going to be a lot more effective. So not to dismiss the add-on competencies that Gen Z is bringing along the way. And I think in general, in my perception, in the conversation Vaios and I had, that generation is quite eager to learn. Like, it's very curious generation. It's a very asking questions, and because you're not shy, you will be asking questions, and that makes you in general very open for whatever is coming your way. You may not like everything, but neither do I, so that makes us absolutely the same. Yeah, there was really good thoughts, good input, and good insights that you shared with us, Adriana. It was lovely to have you. We have one last thing before we're closing out. We're always doing a lightning round. It's fast-paced questions. They're very simple, and you just give one answer. Don't overthink it. Whatever comes to mind first, let us know. Your favorite chat channel? WhatsApp, okay. Social media you spend the most time on?
TikTok.
You get your music from?
Spotify.
You get your podcasts from?
Spotify.
Physical books or audiobooks?
Audiobooks. Physical books.
Physical books. What is the one skill you would Gen X, so my generation, recommend to learn?
Flexibility.
What is the one skill you would your generation recommend to learn?
Openness.
Okay. And if there was a famous person you would like to meet, who would that be?
Kristen Stewart.
Okay. Why?
Because I'm a big fangirl of her, and it's nothing personal. She's as a figure, as an actress. She's I don't know. She's a big idol. Nothing
Nice.
personal. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, Adriana, it was a blast having you on the show, getting your perspective, getting to know you. Very enriching. I can't believe you're actually only 23 years old. I think you sound a lot, very mature, quite well developed. Maybe it's a psychology study. Maybe that plays into it. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot.
Indeed. It was great having you. Thank you, Adriana, for the time today. I think everyone knows by now that we're live on every channel that you can get your podcast from, including YouTube. So try to look us up, subscribe, and until next time, see you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.